back to another edition of JMC Live. I am your host, Jeremy Caverly. We do this normally on Saturdays, but due to unforeseen events in family, one of them being Miranda being sick and then other things going on with different people, I want to welcome the few new viewers that showed up. Looks like Melissa and Candy Praise, and who else am I missing here? There's probably a few others as well. I'd like to welcome you guys for coming to JMC Live tonight. Now, let me give you an oversight view of what we're going to talk about tonight. And tonight, we're going to take you for another ride like we did last week. Last week, we covered a lot of main topics going on in society. So here's a few things that we're going to talk about that is really going to catch people's eye and make people realize that, well, in society, that the world is not going the way we want. But as Christians, we have, I call it like a challenge from God to not allow the darkness to take us out. And I believe a lot of Christians have seen the dark in the world, those that have thought about becoming Christians, and they're having a lot of trouble making a decision. But the topics tonight are going to try and get you into a direction to where you're going to get help. Tonight's show, we're going to talk about a teen walking for the first time at their high school graduation. We'll talk about what is happening in California again, where two Christians are trying to put Bible verses on a memorial brick fundraiser. We will also talk about how a federal judge is supporting Christianity and trying to help a new policy on street evangelism. We'll also talk about the power of forgiveness and love of Christ. When a woman moves, she doesn't move, but a guy moves in next door to her who happens to be the man who murdered her son. And then we'll go to Florida, finding out about police arresting people for feeding the homeless. And the main topic that will connect to all of these, that will probably stir up a lot of people, will be why Jesus Christ did not have a 501c3, and at what time did the nonprofit event ever occur. All this and more on tonight's JMC Live. To go into breaking news of the day, the biggest thing that just happened about 17 minutes ago is the United States Navy has apparently stopped a missile from being sent to Myanmar. And I'm going to let you guys see this. Check this out here on the New York Times. Right here on the front. The United States Navy intercepted a North Korean ship suspected of carrying missile technology to Myanmar 2 weeks ago. Of course, you know, with me being in the military, I understand you're not going to hear about all this stuff when it first happens. They have to go and verify all the information, then they have to classify some of it, and then you're only hearing half the story. I was talking to my wife before this show tonight, because I just saw this happen about 17 minutes ago, and I said, there's more to this story we're not being talked about. There's other things going on overseas that's going crazy and getting insane. Another thing going on, I sent out a book to someone in Canada, and this is probably going to catch the eye of those that are in Canada, but CBC News in Canada is talking about the postal strike. I didn't know this till I went and mailed out one of the Armed and Dangerous books that I will be giving out tonight. I have another one for you guys. One person will be able to get this book tonight, and I'll explain to you later how. But they told me when I went, I had to fill out a customs form. They said they're going to have to inspect the book because I sent it as a book, and that it might be sent back to me because Canada is on strike with their postal office. And I was like, okay, what's going on with that? I thought it was kind of creepy, but I guess that's how it goes. A lot of things are going crazy in the world, but Christ is faithful to carry us through no matter how bad things get. So let's get right into our main topic, the first topic of the night. Graduation. I know some people don't attend their high school graduations for various reasons. I know others see prom and high school graduation as the biggest point in your life, a pinnacle point of your life, showing that you can follow through and complete something. But what if, let's just say, you can't walk? Let's play the clip.
Angeline Levasseur is used to being a little bit different than everyone else. The 18-year-old grew up in a wheelchair after being born with spina bifida, a degenerative disorder where the vertebrae doesn't form right.
Just being physically different than everybody, it's challenging because you gotta do things differently.
She's done things differently from her classmates for the past 12 years, except for today. Today, Levasseur was just like every other teenager graduating from Pinckney High School.
I'm walking when I get my diploma.
For the first time, her friends and classmates would get to see her walk.
I'm gonna be so happy for her. She's gone through a lot through life, and she's worked very hard, and I think she deserves to be able to walk at her graduation. So it's going to be phenomenal.
Angeline Camille Levasseur.
And it was. Levasseur walked across the stage by herself with a brace underneath her gown and crutches supporting her arms. She left the wheelchair behind the stage and more than ever felt just like everyone else.
Just because I'm in a chair, I still fit it. I still do everything everybody else does. If I can get through it with the challenge that I've got, there's no reason that anybody else can't do it.
All right, so that was a little portion of the clip that you just heard, and I have to tell you, what a better time. Miranda's crying. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on this, Miranda?
I've watched this clip 3 times.
You watched it 3 times,
and I still cry every time because
you want to get on cam, or
no.
you just want to? Oh, she's too busy crying, wiping the tears out of her eyes.
But it is very
an intense story. I wanted to start with something. Yeah, you're not going to see the video play. We just played the audio clip, so it wouldn't take out a lot of time. For those of you who want to watch the clip on your own later, we'll post it in the video. But for those of you who want to bookmark it real quick, I can post it in the chat. How about that? There you go. The wonderful power of the internet. For those of you who were here last week when we talked about social media, you'll kind of understand where I'm coming from on that. Now, change the transition just a little bit. It's not a completely happy story. Well, it's not a happy.
It is not a happy story.
I don't know if those of you who saw my preview video, you probably saw these bricks already, and you're probably wondering, what in the world am I talking about? Check this out. California, as you see, it's got Psalm 68:34. Tell everyone about God's power. Luke 17:13. No one can serve 2 masters. 2 Corinthians 5:17. The old life is gone, a new one's begun. Ephesians 5:32. Be kind to each other, forgive one another. And Romans 8:31. If God is for us, who can be against us? Now, do you think these verses are really a problem for people, or should cause someone to be angry? I don't know. But if for those of you that haven't seen the preview video last week, for this week, you didn't see these images here. You didn't see the video that I made on this. But what's going on in California? I don't know if many of you are familiar with what a lot of colleges or high schools and others do. What they tend to do is they'll have a fundraiser, and you can buy the bricks that go into a certain portion of the building, and that's what these bricks are. They're blank bricks, and you can pay to specifically place some kind of text over each of the brick, but apparently Jesus Christ is not welcome. Of course they're not going to want to have Jesus Christ. This is the Palm Desert High School, and the Desert Sands Unified School District, because they didn't want to have a fight over these bricks, they completely shut down the whole program. So who steps in for them? It's the Alliance Defense Fund, the ADF. They're a Christian organization who are a bunch of lawyers who sometimes do things most of the time for free. And they're stepping in, and to quote a David Cortman, senior counsel for them, Christians should be allowed to express themselves on public school campuses just like everyone else, says the attorney. It's cowardly to shut down everyone in participation in this program simply to keep out Christian speech. One News Now continues to go on and on more about this, talking about the school is punishing everyone, and there's no reason to really put a damper on what everyone else is trying to do, because there's just no reason why, if you're going to say no Christianity, why is the whole thing shut down? On the other side, why wouldn't they allow you to actually move forward and say, we'll allow this, we'll try this, we will have an opportunity? But apparently this school district is going to say no. They're going to say, I can't deal with it. And that's what the world is trying to do to Christians today. That's what they're trying to do to us on a day-to-day basis. But I have to tell you, God's going to win in the end, regardless of what happens with this case. They may stop these bricks from happening, but think about this. How many people have seen these bricks? It went from a school district to a guy here in Ohio to all of you that are in the chat. Everyone has seen these bricks now. Mm-hmm. So God's glory is still being shown through these bricks, even if they're never laid down. God's word will always be used in one way or another. He never fails. He never fails to take us to a place that we may not want to be. I know a lot of people I've talked to recently are in a spot in their life where they don't want to be, and a lot of times God asks us to do the most craziest thing in the world. And the next topic we're going to cover is something majority of us but never possibly dreamed to do. You have the clip ready, Miranda?
It's ready.
All right, let's go for it.
Tonight, with one of the most potent powers on earth, it can change lives in an instant. Everyone has it. It's the power to forgive. Watch it now in action in Steve Hartman's Assignment America.
In a small apartment building in North Minneapolis, a 59-year-old teacher's aide sings praise to God for no seemingly apparent reason. Indeed, if anyone was to have issues with the Lord, it would be Mary Johnson.
For all you've done for me. He never had a chance.
In February 1993, Mary's son, Loramian Bird, was shot to death during an argument at a party. He was 20 and Mary's only child.
My son was gone.
The killer was a 16-year-old kid named O'Shea Israel.
I wanted justice. He was an animal. He deserved to be caged.
And he was. Tried as an adult and sentenced to 25 and a half years. O'Shea served 17 before being recently released. He now lives back in the old neighborhood, close to Mary. This close.
He lives next door.
Next door.
How a convicted murderer ended up living a door jam away from his victim's mother is a story not of horrible misfortune, as you might expect, but of remarkable mercy.
A few years ago, Mary asked if she could meet O'Shea here at Minnesota's Stillwater State Prison. As a devout Christian, she felt compelled to see if there was some way, if somehow, she could forgive her son's killer.
What'd she say to you? I believe the first thing she said was, look, you don't know me, I don't know you, let's just start with right now. That I was befuddled myself.
O'Shea says they met regularly after that. When he got out, she introduced him to her landlord, who, with Mary's blessing, invited O'Shea to move into the building. Today, they don't just live close, they are close. Clearly, Mary was able to forgive.
Unforgiveness is like cancer. It will eat you from the inside out. It's not about that other person. Me forgiving him does not diminish what he's done. Yes, he murdered my son. But the forgiveness is for me. It's for me.
For O'Shea, it hasn't been that easy.
I haven't totally forgiven myself yet. I'm learning how to forgive myself. And I'm still growing towards, trying to forgive myself and what it is I've done.
To that end, O'Shea is now busy proving himself to himself. He works at a recycling plant by day and goes to college by night. He says he's determined to pay back Mary's clemency by contributing to society. In fact, he's already working on it, singing the praises of God and forgiveness at prisons, churches, to large audiences everywhere.
Forgiveness is a powerful thing.
I'm grateful.
Which explains why Mary can sing her praise of thanks to her audience of one. Steve Hartman, CBS News, Minneapolis.
Okay, guys, sorry for the audio problems. I know most of you won't be able to hear that. What we'll do is we're going to have this audio clip added into our YouTube video, and I'll probably won't save this live stream because there'll be like a 3-minute dead silence of nothingness. But for the article, what's going on is there's this woman whose son was murdered, and the guy that killed her son literally moves in next door to her house. Like, here, you're in apartment 1, he's in apartment 2. Literally. Next door to each other. The video clip apparently assumes that he got saved either in prison or sometime after. The mother is singing praises in the beginning, and they frequently dine with each other, go to church with each other, and do various things. He's doing community service, he's going to church, he's helping different people, and he's doing it with the mother of the person that he killed. In North Minneapolis, in 1993, there was a gunshot during an argument at a party. He was 20, and it was her only child. He was 16 years of age when this happened. And when this first happened, she said he was an animal and he deserved to be caged. Furthermore, what happens in it is that she was having trouble with herself, and she eventually realized that she had to learn to forgive, and that through forgiveness she could have healing. She said, unforgiveness is like a cancer. It will eat you from the inside out. It's not about that other person. Me forgiving him does not diminish what he has done. Yes, he murdered my son, but the forgiveness is for me. It's only for me. Now, O'Shea says he hasn't totally forgiven himself yet, but he's learning to forgive himself, and he's still growing to try to learn how to forgive himself. That's why he's doing community service. He's involved in church. He's hanging out with the woman of the mother, to fathomably think this in your mind, it really blows you away, because you can't think that, most of the time, good example is, would you allow a pedophile to live next door to your kids if you know that they molested one of your kids and killed them? Most people would say no. Most people would say no. It's like, you killed my son, I won't forgive you. I see posts on Facebook and Twitter all the time saying, this guy deserves to die, or this guy deserves the death penalty, this guy deserves to hang, or this guy or girl deserves to be in prison for life, or you need to get this blank, 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 and I'm like, wow, there's no forgiveness. It's only retribution and vengeance. There's no turn the other cheek, because we live in a society that if we just sat here and just turn the other cheek on everything that everyone did, do you imagine how bad things would be? That's the mindset the majority of people, when I ask these questions, well, could you forgive them? They'll say, I can't forgive him. I can't do it. No, not me. Not me, Lord. I'll forgive him, but he needs to go to jail. He needs to die. And he's like, oh, look at my hands, Jesus says. Look at the scars of my hands. I already died for this sin. And then everyone stops talking. And then everyone realizes that a true forgiveness is to be able to live next door to the person that's ever hurt you, and to tell that person, I forgive you and I love you. Who cares if they always hate you for the rest of your life? This is about you and how you respond. Because we are a selfish people. We expect justice. We expect retribution and vengeance. And we expect these people to hurt. And the list goes on and on and on. It's like, well, if I forgive, then all that power is taken away. You can't be angry anymore. You can't be upset anymore. Because when you're angry at someone who's hurt your family, you know what you're going to do? You're probably going to flip them off. You're going to cuss them out. And if you don't do it verbally and with your hands, you're doing it in your head. You're staring them down like this and saying, I want you to die. I wish that you would rot in hell, and blah, 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 blah. And you're just looking at them, and your eyes get big and dilated, and you're like, your heart's like beating 90 miles an hour, and you're like, you're getting angry, and you get more angry, and then guess who's the one that's hurting? Because this guy, he's not in prison anymore. He's out on the street. He can go get a girlfriend. He can go smoke some dope. He can go get a job. He can have fun. Well, what are you doing? You sitting over here on the side, and you're like, where's my Prozac? I need a doctor. I need this. I'm like, well, what happened to, I need Jesus Christ? What happened to, Jesus Christ set me free? What happened to, turn the other cheek? What happened to, I can do all things through Christ Jesus? Nothing is impossible with God. I rest my case. Of course, I'm not saying you should just use God and the Bible as a free ticket to say, this guy doesn't deserve a punishment. Because I was in the military, and there's a fine line between righteous punishment and then a fine line to on the other side of what God should do. Because sometimes God gives us, if we look in the Old Testament, you'll see where God ordained war when the people of Israel were under attack. God said, you can fight. There are times that you have to fight. Physically. There are times that you have to, when someone has done something wrong, like a child. Are you going to allow the child to touch the stove? Here's the stove. Here's my hand. You're going to allow the child to touch the stove. You're going to slap his hand, aren't you? Or you're going to grab it. Or you're going to say, don't do that. There are times that you have to take control and move forward. And as I said earlier, sometimes God takes bad situations and can turn them into good. Here's another example of that. It's a good example of that. We're going to go all the way over to Chicago. I have friends that live in Chicago. What's your phone? So here's what's happening in Chicago. You're not going to answer that? Okay. Well, here's what's happening in Chicago. A federal judge, and to get this story, the background story, what happened in July 2008, a pastor was handing out gospel tracts, like say a book like this. I'll use an example. A book like the one I'm going to show you here in my hand. Say he was handing out, or I don't know what he was handing out. They were gospel tracts. I'll use this as an example. He was handing out gospel tracts at the St. Symphorus Paris Family Festival, a public event in Illinois. And what happened is, he was charged with criminal trespassing to property. Noel Starrett, Amara, and Baker helped defend this pastor. Here's what they said. Even when the message of the cross was unpopular and not welcomed by the parish, ironically, and by the city of Chicago, he was nevertheless willing to stand his ground for the gospel and for his constitutional rights. Now, furthermore, so they go against the city, a pastor. And originally he was told, you can't preach and you can't share the word of God at these public events. Someone stood up for him and said, yes, you can. It would be unconstitutional if you could not, and you would not be allowed to honestly stand up and carry forth the word of God. So now this pastor, and through the rest of the trial and everything, they're going to go ahead and be allowed to preach. It says, so thankfully Pastor Teasdale and his church members from Garfield Ridge Baptist Church in Chicago were willing to go toe-to-toe with the city of Chicago for 3 years. Now imagine this. You're going back and forth from court to court, from call to call, letter to letter, to get a judge to rule that their policy was unconstitutional. After Judge William T. Hart dismissed the city's position in 2010, they refused to back down. So eventually, later on when you read the rest of the article here at One News Now, through 3 years of fighting, a long, long, hard battle, they won. And I believe that God will transform people when you decide to want to wake up. You ever had something that you wanted really bad and it didn't matter what the cost was? No matter the cost, I want it. No matter the cost, I'm going to get it. That's what Christ says to you today. He says that He wants your all in all. We sing that old song, on the piano. And then some people, they'll do like a multi, like versal thing going on. It's like, you're my strength when I am weak. I will seek you. You're my all in all. Can you sing that when you're going through trouble? And if you knew you had to do it for 3 years on the same one thing, would it be worth it in the end to know that God would get the glory out of it? And it would change your life and things would be a lot better for you than what they were from before? I don't think that a lot of people realize that and that God will transform us. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. I have two more main topics for you, and then a few more surprises that I want to give out with you guys. So what's going to happen when we come back from the break? We're going to cover about the Florida with the homelessness story, about being arrested for feeding homeless, and then I'll tie it into why Jesus Christ didn't have a 501c3 nonprofit status, and why is America pretty much one of the only countries I'm really aware of for this specific thing, one of the main countries that started in the 50s, and you'll find out more. All this and more is going to happen after this break, coming up next on JMC Live. We'll be back. Welcome back, guys, to JMC Live. At the break, we're just going to say a quick prayer for some people in the chat. I know a lot of people are struggling with things going on. I want to welcome the new members that have shown up tonight. It's amazing the power of social media and those that want to serve the Lord. Like I said at the break, we have two main topics. I'm going to try and cover them in 30 minutes. And then we're going to have an after show. And those of you that are new have never experienced a JMC after show. Guess what's going to happen? First thing that happens on the after show in 30 minutes, we're giving away another book. And I'm still debating how I'm going to do this. I'm thinking about a question, probably. And more than likely, my wife's going to tap me on the shoulder and say, here's a question for you. Or I'll figure one out, one of the two. So here's what's going to happen next. For those of you that don't know who I am, I'm about to elaborate on part of my testimony that is going to shake some people's toes. It always shakes people's toes because most people don't see me as the person who has ever gone through anything. I'm always told that even now that I'm almost not even 2 months away, well, kind of 2 months away from being 31, I'm typically told I still look 17, and that you just don't have any scars on your outside of your body, and you're just always so happy and friendly. There's just no way you could have ever gone through something. I'm tying this next topic into my testimony because I pick these topics frequently because it's part of my life. Well, what if you lived in Florida and you wanted to help the homeless? What if you were told that you couldn't just help the homeless because you didn't either have a food permit or whatever the issue is? Well, members and this is in Orlando, Food Not Bombs were arrested Wednesday. This was written on the 2nd of June due to a city ordinance by feeding the homeless in Lake Eloa Park. Looks like a guy, 2 girls, and an older guy at 6 p.m. violated restricting group feedings in public parks. This organization started in the 80s. The group lost their court battle in April by clearing the way for the city to enforce the ordinance. It requires 2 groups to obtain a permit and limits each group to 2 permits per year for each park within a 2-mile radius of City Hall. So this is what's going on in Orlando, Florida. They're going to arrest people for feeding the hungry. And I said just a second ago, this is connected to my testimony. Yes, I, Jeremy, have been homeless before. And I knew in Texas when I was homeless, if you didn't have a food permit, you couldn't feed the homeless on the street. That was Houston law. So just you randomly, trying to bring a group of people. If it was just you picking a guy up and getting him a sandwich, you're fine. But I'm talking about if you're going to set out a big table and you're going to be literally feeding with a large multitude, you would be told the same thing. If I remember correctly my Bible, the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus fed, the people, did Jesus Christ have a food permit? No. As I stated last week, society and culture has changed to where we have to continue to move to a new level, and this new level of culture states more laws, more ordinances on things, and it's supposed to be for the protection of the people. We don't want to feed homeless people laced food that will kill you. So therefore, we're going to create a law that will protect the homeless and the non-homeless. But at the same time, if you have a group such as this Orlando Food Not Bombs, and they've been around for a while, they should still be allowed to feed. And that's the problem that happens to a majority of different people, is that you're faced with a situation where you cannot cross the line. Like I said the other day on another show, and this will step on some more of your toes, Jesus would not have a food permit. Jesus wouldn't have a 501c3. Jesus wouldn't have anything but himself. And more than likely, Jesus would probably look like a homeless guy. He would stink. He would be unshaven. He might even be barefoot and have torn clothes. He would be the complete opposite of what these great crosses that have Jesus hung up on, or these great pictures with Jesus that are red, white, blue, green, and all different colors of the rainbow. He wouldn't look in the way that you would believe. And the other side of the Bible, it also talks about that you may be entertaining angels unaware. A lot of times God tends to move you to a place where, just like that story helping that kid, what if that kid's an angel and you don't know it? What if these homeless people are angels and you're just telling them to just go, go on with your life or whatever? I think it's crazy, because not only did they break the law, they have to be in jail for 60 days, a $500 fine, or both. They received permits and fed more than 25 people at the lake on 2 dates, and the group rejected the permits. Rejecting permits. I don't know. So what they ended up doing is they set bail at $250. 2 people got released early. The problem is with law, and I've been to college and political science classes. You got in jail for 60 days and $500 fine, and then another $250 to get you out. That's $750 per person. That's 4 people.
Could you imagine sitting in jail and the guy next to you has done something like robbed or beaten somebody up, and then they say, "Well, what are you in for?" I said, "I fed a homeless person." That's really bad.
Like, what are you in here for? It's like, I killed my mother. What are you in here for? I fed people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You see, that's where this is getting out of control. The Bible is very clear, and like Jeff said, and I can expound a little further on that, it's like when you give to the poor, you're supposed to be blessed. And not only that, at the same time, for you to be blessed, you're going to be cursed upon. You're going to have people spit in your face. You're going to have people cuss you out. You're going to have people steal from you. You're going to have people wanting to beat you up. When you're doing what God wants you to do, you're going to make someone angry. And there's going to be someone else that will want to help you. That's going to say, I'm going to grab your hand. And I'm not going to let you go. And I'm going to walk this battle on this earth with you until we go. And there'll be good days and bad days. But when you are faced with a situation like this, what are you willing to do? What are you willing to do? Like I said the other day, you only serve 2 masters. You only have 2 options. What is God saying to your hearts? Because I bring these stories to you because I want you to have something to talk about with other people. Because feeding the homeless, I think, is a common thing across the world. All over the place. You can say hi to. Welcome to See Freedom Now. Welcome to the chat. I have to state that as we transition to this next subject, I don't expect everyone to stay in the chat. Because this will make some people angry. Because most people were not born before 1953. And you got to realize, in my almost 31 years of age, I was raised by people over the age of 70.
As was I.
Some of them were in their teens, some of them were in their 20s. When Social Security started. When the 501c3 started. And while these 2 events were quite interesting, occurring almost instantaneously, you're going to find out some things that'll wake you up. So let me take you for a ride. 501c3 facts. The tax-exempt religious organizations. It's been going on for 50 years. Technically, the tax code started in 1954. So that's our first piece of information. Anyone alive in 1954 in the chat? Maybe 1 or 2 of you. I know at least one person was alive that's listening to the show now. You can thank Senator Lyndon B. Johnson. It's also connected to when they created Social Security. Now, when I talked to my grandmother, Social Security at the time, and this is before my grandmother's now passed away, but I can clearly say this in confidence, she would say this today. Social Security would be fought at by conservatives like Obamacare is right now.
It was.
They called Social Security a socialist bought takeover of health.
They also even said it was the mark of the beast.
And some people say it was a step towards the mark of the beast because they wanted you to have another requirement card to track you.
Yeah.
And churches were preaching a form of the mark of the beast through Social Security. Now, my wife is disabled. She gets Social Security. And I know others get Social Security. But the times of the days, that's how they thought. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to tell you what I think until the end. At least on that. So what happened, it was supposed to help churches and other organizations throughout having different rules. Now here's the creepy part about having a license through the government. Now first of all, the First Amendment is very clear that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, nor prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So if we already have a law stating to stay out of the way of religion activities, which at the time included tithing, because it's very obvious that the Founding Fathers understood what tithing meant and paying money to the poor and all this. You saw the whole Robin Hood stuff going on, and list goes on and what happened. Here's what happens. If the government declares something illegal, and I mean anything illegal, homosexuality is okay, Good example is in Canada. Certain ways that you preach about homosexuality right now, you can lose your ministering license in a way because you'll lose your 501c3.
And also in the Islamic countries, if a Christian is caught referring to Allah as, or something they were referring to Allah or talking about Allah or saying anything that might be offensive to a Muslim or anybody of the Islamic faith, they could be arrested or even murdered or killed.
So what happens is when you place your hand upon the government and saying, okay, we're going to allow the government to monitor what we do with the church. Now what happened is Christians stepped up later and created their own version of it for financial accountability, because we talked about this too. The other side of the coin is that there's a lot of financial fraud.
Yeah.
And a lot of fake churches that are asking for money and asking for things and trying to do different things. You guys realize here at JMC Ministries, on JMC Live and all of our other networks that we have, we don't ask you for money unless I can specifically say, this person has a need, can you please help it? Here's where the bill is going to be paid. Go give the money to the bill. Go get the groceries. Here's the address of the person who needs the food. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to sit here and ask for money. I'll never do it. What happens if we fast forward to the end of days and Revelation time? The church is going to be more controlled by government. You see that in the Islamic and other religious beliefs. Christianity is being wiped out across the world. Christianity is being wiped out. More persecution overseas, but at the same time, there are more Christians that are getting saved in third world countries, where if they are told, if you become a Christian, they will chop your head off. They will throw you in a pit of acid. They will take your child and rape it in front of you. They will sell you into a workplace and they will work you like crazy. And the list goes on and on. Canada is one step away from getting worse because they have that whole homosexual thing going on right now. So, here's our next step. If you allow a government to be that way, you're going to lose it. So here's what happened. Was the church ever taxed before 1954? Did you realize that the church never had to be non-profit or profit before 1954? Let me say that again. Profit or non-profit. The church never gave money. Most of them never gave any money before 1954. My mother, her mother, my grandmother, told me that her church, when her great-grandfather pastored, he didn't give money to the government. This is 1915. Baptist church. He didn't do anything. Didn't have to. First Amendment was clear. Now here's the problem in society. We are ignorant of the truth. That's the problem why people my age and younger have jumped on the socialism bandwagon. Because we're used to having everything now and having everything the way we want. And they don't understand what it means to work for something. They don't understand what it means to just do it. I mean, this whole thing to even get the status, the IRS form 1023, 1024, publication 557. Some organizations are not required to fill out the form 23, and it includes churches, interchurch organizations, the local units of a church, conventions or associations of churches, integrated auxiliaries of a church such as a men's, women's organization, religious school, mission society, youth group. These organizations are exempt automatically if they meet the requirements of a 501c3. According to IRS Code 508C1A, special rules with respect to the section, new organization must notify a secretary if they're applying for it, and mandatory exceptions, churches, auxiliaries, etc., I mean, the list goes on about how do you have to fill out the publication 526 for tax deductible stuff and everything. And the reason why I wanted to bring this up tonight as my main topic is because you have an opportunity to open the door for a truth that you've never been told. Because I keep getting people knocking on my door telling me I need to become a corporate and I need to become a nonprofit. I said, well, there's no money exchange coming into my hands. Yes, I've had people donate on the PayPal, and that money was directly transferred to AEP to pay someone's electric bill. Well, that needs to be followed. Well, my money's being taxed. Their money's being taxed. So, explain this to me. Tell me what's going on. I'd like to welcome our website designer, XSOs, in the chat. I want to say hi, dude. Hope you're doing well. We have recently updated the site. Who else is new in the chat? Let's see. Did I miss anyone? White Hazard. Hello, White Hazard. How are you? So, if you have questions in the chat, this is the time to answer questions in the chat. And we'll do whatever you have any questions for. I'll talk to you about it. Miranda, your thoughts on this 501c3 real quick.
Well, my family's been in ministry for, with my great-grandparents, it would be nearly 100 years my family has been in ministry.
100 years. That's a long time.
And I come from a long line of preachers, singers, and all kinds of stuff. And, you know, my family, my grandfather, when he pastored church, he didn't, you know, the ministry work he did, and my grandma did, and the ministry work my parents did, they never went out and got a nonprofit. Mm-hmm. They still don't have a nonprofit. And I told my dad one night, I said, I was kind of angry because all these people said, well, you're not a legitimate ministry unless you get a nonprofit status. And I was very angry, and things just come out of my mouth. You know how that happens, Jeremy. And I said, well, you know what? I don't need a nonprofit because Jesus was the prophet, and that's the only prophet I need. If Jesus has called you to do ministry, again real slow. I told my dad, I said, I don't need a nonprofit.
You don't need a nonprofit.
Because Jesus was the prophet.
Because Jesus was the prophet. You hear this?
And He's the only prophet I need.
I don't need a prophet because Jesus is the only prophet I need. Because I have to tell you another secret about nonprofits that I didn't know when I was a teen. There are people on payroll in nonprofits. Mm-hmm. They get paid. So when you donate to a big organization, you donate money that goes in someone's pocket.
But it isn't always bad. It isn't always bad. Now, I understand if you're going to run a homeless shelter, a big food pantry.
If you're going to do food pantries, homeless shelters, disaster relief, you need to have a nonprofit to be able to work with Christians and non-Christians. You're going to have both.
But just for the average person that has a regular ministry that's not trying to do all that extreme stuff, for people to say, well, you're not really doing ministry, that's crap. Because if Jesus has called you, Jesus has called us, all of us, to be disciples and to be fishers of men. He didn't need a nonprofit to do what he was doing around Jerusalem and Israel and all and around. He never got a nonprofit, and he reached the entire world in 3 years. I mean, what he did in 3 years before he was crucified has lasted over 2,000 years. If that man didn't need a nonprofit, why do we need a nonprofit? And why do we need to feed that big government?
And the argument is that you don't want to have a Judas as your accountant.
That's right.
That's the argument. I'm going to talk on their side for a minute. Because I don't want everyone
Judas,
mad at me.
If you
Judas had the money, and Judas spent the money on himself.
And read in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Read in every scripture that has Judas in it. He was always handling money. And what did he do? He sold his soul basically for 30 pieces of silver and turned against Jesus and basically damned himself.
A lot of times people can't do things because they don't have money. And we at JMC Ministries, we don't ask for donations for ourselves. And because of that, I've said, God, if you want someone to help us, you bring them to us. I don't want to have to ask.
But also many of the disciples, they didn't depend on donations.
No.
What did they do? They went into the cities and they worked. They had a trade. Paul is our big example. We want to be like Paul. He was a tent maker. So wherever he went, he was able to make tents and sell and make money. Not by begging, but he had a skill. Peter and John and all of them, they were fishermen. They were able to make money from their trade as fishermen. And that truly, to me, is what we are supposed to do. That's why if God wants us to do ministry, He's going to give us the right kind of job. He's going to give us everything to do it. And He has.
And I mean, I've helped people that have profits. I've helped people that have non-profits. I'm not going to be picky on that. To the point where, because you're supposed to not allow your actions to cause someone else to sin.
Exactly.
So, I try and put a balance in between my conservative views and also my ability to help people. Like on the website, we have a Contact Us page. We have a prayer request page. And the devotionals of JMC Bites and all the other stuff that we have on there. Because I want to make one place for a whole family to go where you can pray, you can read, you can do things with your kids and all sorts of stuff and still have time for yourselves. That's what I'm trying to do with everything. With the whole site. Because I believe God wants to transform us to a place that we should be. So here's what's going to happen. We have a lot of people in the chat. And for those of you in the chat, I don't want you to run away. This is going to be the end of the podcast, the YouTube video. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in for the podcast, the YouTube video. Guys in the chat, don't run away. We'll be right back.